Okay, so welcome back everybody for week 6. This is our last week and we are covering proprioception and interoception today. So we have a lot of information to cover and we're also going to conclude our presentation with the post-satisfaction survey. So it's a version that was completed in the beginning along with the parent stress scale, all that stuff. It won't take but about 5 minutes at the end. So let's get started. So this is our flyer that we've been using the whole time. So you can see what we've done so far, and we're now at the last week. It's hard to believe that we've already done 6 of these now. So if you want to refer back, you can always go back to our YouTube channel, Speaking Senses on YouTube, and you can watch all of the videos that we've done so far. And we're always open to questions. If you ever have any, feel free to shoot us a Facebook message, email, however. So let's jump right into proprioception. So what is proprioception? It's our body's ability to know where it is in space. So if you remember last week we talked about vestibular. It's different than vestibular. Vestibular is more about knowing where our head is in space in relation to our body because those receptors are in our inner ear. Proprioception is more about knowing where everything else is in space. So vestibular is more the head, and then proprioception is more arms, legs, trunk, everything else. So it's the moderator of all of our senses. So it's the only sense that can assist with calming and helping to improve attention. So these receptors are within our muscles and joints. So these, whenever they're stimulated by pressure and movement. So whenever we're jumping or we get a nice tight hug or tight squeezes under a heavy weighted blanket, we are getting proprioceptive input from our body. So this plays a large role in coordination, balance, posture, and attention, self-regulation, because these receptors are then telling our brain what's going on in our muscles, our tendons, our joints, all that information. So once we know like where our body is in space, then our coordination and our balance can start developing. If we don't have that, we'll see that later in the slides, what may happen if we're having challenges with proprioception. It assists with self-regulation, and because it has the calming abilities. So like I said, it's the moderator of all other senses. So it's the only one that can help bring our heightened sensory experience down. So in previous examples that we've given for case studies, we talked about a little boy who needed some tight squeezes to calm him down. So this is exactly what we're talking about. So that is proprioceptive input. It assists with our ability to talk, write, climb, and all other movements. So if we're not quite comfortable or know where our body is in space, then we wouldn't be able to do all these things. And it's important for gross and fine motor development. So it's important to be able to write. So that's more fine motor skills, because if we don't know where our arm is in space or our hand or any of that, we're not comfortable with those movements. So that's kind of how it all plays together. So what does proprioception look like in a functioning person? So we like to give these slides just to give you an idea of what's the ideal situation, right? So I know we've been hitting on a lot of the negative stuff, but we wanted to give you the positive light too. So functional proprioception is when a child or a person is processing this input, their brain is detecting it, they're modulating it, and then they're producing appropriate responses. So they're able to do all of these things listed and more. This is just a small list of them. So they're writing without breaking the lead and the pencil. So they're able to modulate the amount of force they put through their hand to write to make a correct mark, but not too hard that they're breaking the lead of the pencil. They're able to manipulate buttons and zippers. They know where their hands are in space, and they don't have to look at the buttons to see how they're manipulating everything. So if you think about yourself, can you button your buttons or your zipper of your pants without looking at yourself in a mirror? Sometimes it is hard. Sometimes I do have to, if I'm doing a button down shirt, I have to look in the mirror to see everything to make sure it's lined up and everything. But that's what proprioception is. We're able to do it without looking at it. Walking and balancing without difficulty, able to eat without minimal mess and spillage. So the ability to know where our hand is on the spoon to get to our mouth without dropping all over us and without hitting our mouth or our teeth or anything like that. Enjoying sports, but does not constantly seek movement. So of course we're humans. We want to be moving, we want to be active, but there's a difference between a child being moving and active versus constantly seeking that movement, which we'll go into a little bit. And then kicking a ball and running without looking at your feet, which takes a little bit of development and skills there. So what is dysfunction? They may seem clumsy or difficulties with balance because they're not quite sure where their body is or comfortable with those movements. Sometimes you see slouching or posture because those proprioceptors are also in our spinal muscles. So it gives us the information about how we're sitting up straight or if we're slouched. So someone who's not processing that sensory information will often be hunched over or slouched, which I'm very guilty of myself. A messy eater. So, someone who drops things on their face, just like this little kid here enjoying this brownie. He's got it all over his face. So that's a sign of it. Poor fine motor control. So they're having challenges with little movements of their hands, like the buttons and all that stuff. Prefers rough play, presents as impulsive and aggressive and hyperactive. So this person is seeking that movement. They have a high threshold of movement to get that proprioceptive input. So they come off as this way simply because they're trying to reach that sensory threshold. So what does it look like for a child who's under-responsive? So this is the most common. So these are our sensory seekers. So they may chew on, items that may not be food. So sometimes we see kids chewing on the neck of their shirts or chewing on their sleeves, stuff like that, because they're trying to get that input from their jaw, their sensory proprioceptive receptors in our muscles for our mouth. So by doing that, then they get that input that they're looking for. They may hyperextend their joints. So by giving those muscles an additional stretch, they're able to get more input that way. They may bang their body parts, throw themselves on the floor, simply because they're trying to meet that threshold. They may have a heavy grip on the pencil. They're pushing down too hard on it. They may break the lead of the pencil very easily. They prefer rough play, enjoy running, jumping, stomping, climbing, push-ups, all that additional movement to get that additional input. They might walk on their tiptoes. When you walk on your tiptoes, you're stretching your calf muscle even more. So that means that they're getting more input in their calves by walking on their toes. Mm-hmm. They may hide in tight spots. They may like more tight quarters, and they love deep pressure. So they may really like weighted blankets and stuff like that, that heavy tactile that gives that deep proprioceptive input. So a child who's over-responsive. So this is not as common as a child who is under-responsive. So these are those sensory avoiders, but they may seem as if they have low energy. They may be clumsy, not because they're seeking that input, but rather their body's not able to process that input. They may not want to get out of bed. Maybe those blankets are nice and tight on them and giving them that nice squeeze that they're seeking or that they like because they're over-responsive. So this is one of the examples. So your child may not want to get out of the bed in the morning because they like that input. They may bump into walls and items that may not notice, may not register with them that they're bumping into things. They may have a very high pain tolerance, a negative reaction to movement, a fear of moving sometimes. Maybe they are very sensitive to certain movements. They avoid big movements. They like to do a lot of smaller movements. Also tactile defensiveness and avoiding touch is a sign of over-responsive to, so we covered some tactile defensiveness when we covered the tactile portion, so if you want to refer back to that, but simply just avoiding the touch of others and not really wanting that proprioceptive input from getting hugs from others. So we have a case example here. It's Paula, 7. She's an uncoordinated little girl. She has a jerky way of moving, struggles to get dressed, and needs to watch her feet when she goes up and down stairs. Whenever possible, she seeks deep pressure on her body. When she goes through a doorway, she bumps her shoulders against the door jambs, ricocheting from side to side. When she goes down a hallway, she bangs her heels on the floor and presses her back against the wall and drags her body along. So we can see that Paula here is sensory seeking. She is looking for additional proprioceptive input whenever possible. So for her, that means getting deep pressure on the body or hitting the door jamb when she's walking through it or dragging her back along the wall when she's going down a hallway. So having observed her self-therapy, her parents have made simple accommodations at home. In the backyard, they installed a sturdy play equipment. In the basement, they rigged up a chinning bar and laid out mattresses on the floor so she can hang and jump. She uses the equipment regularly because the additional proprioceptive input makes her feel more together. So you can see how she has a sensory threshold. Her parents have recognized this, that she needs additional input, and how they've implemented changes into their house and their daily routine so that she can meet that threshold, so she can function and pay attention when necessary. And that's her escape. She can go down to those places, get what she needs, and then come back and is ready to participate with other people. So this is a learning activity. I'm very excited about this one. We're not going to do this one together just because it's a little hard to simulate over Zoom, but I wanted to share it with y'all. It's called the shopping game. So the supplies that you need are a plastic beach bucket or a laundry basket, heavy groceries, heavy books, and coupons, pictures of the items. So just like you would in a grocery store, you're going to go shopping. So you can hide the groceries around the room. You can put the books in the basket to make it heavier. You can spread the coupons across the room, and you can have the child match the food items to the picture. So if they go get a picture, they have to find that food item hidden around the room. And then they put them in the basket and push around their shopping cart. So this is a great activity that you can do at home. You can use heavy groceries at home, like boxes of cereal, cans of coffee, canned items, water bottles, whatever you have at the house that you can hide to make it a little fun game. You can also make it a little bit harder by adding a friend in the basket, like pictured in this picture we have here. So that way they have to push more. So proprioceptive input is really given by pushing, pulling, lifting, carrying, stretching. So that's called heavy work. So this activity is really looking at promoting heavy work and getting that calming proprioceptive input for a child who has higher levels of needs. So another way you could do it too is you could give them a grocery list that they have to memorize, and then they have to find the specific items on the list. So that could be a way to incorporate visual scanning or auditory input. So you can make it a multisensory approach instead of just proprioception. All right. So we have another learning activity, but we're actually going to do this one. So I'm very excited about this. We're going to make a stress or squeeze ball. So what you need is a funnel, a water bottle, balloons, and you put flour in the water bottle. Sorry, I misspelled flour. Fill the balloon over the water bottle and then pour it in and tie. This is great for squeezing. We have one already made, thanks to Tashara. So she made it for us. So it's a great way to get some input by squeezing it. It's a good fidget for kids. And this is a fun activity that you can do with your family. It's fairly cheap. All you need is a balloon and some flour, which most people have some flour around the house. You can also do rice or beans in it, or sugar, whatever you think works best. And also something to consider if your child's allergic to latex, include latex-free balloons that you can get from the Dollar Tree. So we already have this a little set up. So I have flour in the water bottle and I have the balloon on top. So we already did some of the steps. So we're just gonna pour it in and hope it goes in and doesn't make a mess. Yes. Perfect. And once you have enough flour in there, you simply pull it off. And then you tie it. I can't do that. And voila, we have another one. So this one can be for Lexi.
Yay.
So she can play with it too. It's, like I said, it's great to give that extra input. It's simple. You can make it as a family. Everybody can have one. They can choose the colors they want. The balloons pictured here are very fun balloons. So we just have basic pink ones. So you can get creative as much as you want with them. I saw the article linked mentioned below. If it were to start to get a hole and leak, you can put another balloon around it and you can save it. That way flour doesn't get all over your house. Okay, so some activities that you can use at home. So we always like to give you a list of activities that you can incorporate into your daily routine or at your house, whatever works best for you and your family. So one that we thought about was jump and crash. So you can make those indoor obstacles like what we showed last week, have different pillows around the house, jump and crash. So that gives the child an appropriate means of receiving the proprioceptive input that they need. if you make it a game and all that stuff. Tug of peace, you could have just like the picture up in the right corner. It could be brother versus sister, whoever, crossing a line, all that fun stuff. So by pulling, they get that input. Simon Says is a great one. This has been an example for a lot of them because it incorporates so many things. They have to know, they have to listen to the instructions, they have to know vestibular information, they have to know proprioception, where their body is, that way they can replicate the movements. Squeeze toy, so like we just made, is a great one. Heavy work, so like I mentioned earlier, heavy work is really what proprioception, it provides additional proprioceptive input, so push, pull, carry, lift, stretch, all of those are great ones. Gymnastics is a fun one, so you can have a little gymnastics party in the living room. Animal walks, so we have a picture of animal walks here provided for you. So frog jumps, crab walks, bear walks, kangaroo jumps, these are all great examples. If you make an obstacle course, you can incorporate these into your obstacle course, or you could just be silly and be like, hey, I'll race you to the kitchen, but we got to jump like a frog. So you can make it fun as you want to, and that way it gives them appropriate ways to get that input. Wheelbarrow races are fun, so mom and sibling and dad and brother, whoever, wheelbarrow race. Weighted ball games, push-ups, so you can do chair push-ups or you can do wall push-ups. These are great to give the child or whoever additional input. Dancing and shaking water bottles, so I have an example of a weighted water bottle up top. So they made it fun, it's green, it's slimy, that gives them a visual stim, but also something that's a little bit heavier provides some input. Chewing gum and crunchy foods. This is a good way to get it. By chewing, it gives you that additional proprioceptive input within your mouth, like what we mentioned earlier. So that's a good one that they could use wherever. Bouncing on a ball is also another fun activity to do. So we're just going to wrap up a little bit because that was a lot of information. So proprioception is the sense that helps the child with body awareness, and this is through push, pull, heavy work, stretch, all these different activities. So using a body sock or yoga positions or trampoline or the steamroller that we mentioned a couple weeks ago, all these provide proprioceptive input. And I know the list of activities that we used on the previous slide was a lot of ones that we've been using throughout this whole session, but a lot of them address multiple things. So while you're addressing vestibular, a lot of times you're also addressing proprioception. So you're addressing multiple senses at the same time. So that's just something to remember.
So I know that was a lot of great information that Beth just gave you all. And now we're going to talk about another sense. It's called interoception. So it's very similar in the concept that there are receptors, but this is more of a hidden sense. So this is a little more difficult for us as students who are going out into the field. And even your therapist and even you as parents, it's hard to identify how this sensation truly works. So I'm going to try to, simplify it the best I can and explain it more in detail. So it's called the hidden sense. So you'll probably hear it in that context some, and it's the sense that tells us what is happening inside our body. And as you can see from the picture of the little boy, it's talking everything from any organ in his body, such as his kidneys, his spleens, his lungs, his heart. So it's those sensations that are internal but are associated with our organs that help us function and produce, urine when we have to go to the bathroom, or tell us when we're hungry, or tell us when we're thirsty. So have you ever felt, tired, hungry, thirsty, or if you need to go to the bathroom? That's your body telling you that that organ needs to release urine, or whatever the case may be, or that your lungs need to release some oxygen and you need to breathe. So that is that sensation. It's like your everyday survival sensation. It's the best way I can put it to you. And it's also very closely connected to our emotions. So our emotions really do drive this sensation also. It's linked to our physical sensation in our body because, for example, when you get anxious, you have that butterfly in your stomach. That's that whole connection of the emotion and the sensation in that internal organ. So when you notice that someone has damaged something, like your property, you get really angry and frustrated. So there you see that your heart will beat, your muscles will tighten, you get hot. So all those sensations are occurring due to an emotion that has triggered it. And so interoception is recognizing the sensations and applying the emotion and the response that's appropriate. So we're going to get into a little more detail. And like Beth was saying, we're going to talk about function versus dysfunction. So on this slide, we're going to talk about how the system functions and what does a well-functioning system look like. So there are special nerve receptors that are located within our body, such as our organs and our skin. So just like she was saying, the receptors in our joints, so like our shoulders, our elbows, our hands, our fingers, there's also some receptors that communicate to our brain within our organs and in our skin. And so our brain will interpret this information and kind of tell us how we're feeling. And this interoception system, it tells our body to stay in a state of balance, which you've probably heard homeostasis. So this is kind of how we regulate those emotions in our body and all of that connection. And so our interoception system works in a similar way because our organs have a sensitive lining that gives us this information when we're hungry, when we're thirsty, when we're in pain, and then we are able to produce an response. So we can go to the kitchen, we can go get food. So we take for granted this natural ability to go to the bathroom, to go get food, to give us water when we're thirsty. And so it's a really unique, I guess, system, and I really am very in tune with it, and I really like it. So a well-functioning system is going to look like they're going to be able to respond really quickly to the input. So when they need to go to the bathroom, they're going to know, hey, I've got to get to a toilet, and hey, mom, can you pull over, go to the gas station, you know, if we're in a car. Being able to produce that response and, you know, make it efficient. And then they're going to be able to maintain a balance. So they're going to be able to feed themselves, go get a snack. They're going to be able to go get a drink from the refrigerator and know what their body needs to fulfill that need. So that's more so when you're going to see a functioning system. And now we'll look at some dysfunction. And so I want to kind of talk about how, like Beth did, we use these terms every week. So there's over-responsive, there's under-responsive, and then there's discrimination problems. And so a person who is over-responsive, this person is going to be over-responsive to things such as pain. They're going to feel it a lot longer. So they're going to feel it even more intensely as well. So a good example is there's going to be a big response to such a subtle cue. So such as hunger. So say you get hungry, whereas you and I, we're going to be like, okay, I'll go fix a sandwich, you know, whereas this person's going to be like, okay, I need to eat a lot to fill this void. And then that's going to result in a tummy ache or, you know, having to go to the bathroom, and it's just going to be this whole trickle effect. And the urge to go to the bathroom all day, but then it's like that little urge, they can't tell between the difference of a lot and just a little. So that differentiating, and it's going to make them very uncomfortable. So you can see as like a kid in a classroom who needs to go to the bathroom, it may just be that subtle cue that your body's, you know, telling you, but it's much more intense to them. And so then you're under-responsive, they're not going to feel that pain until it is just hit super hard at that intense level. So it takes a little more, like she was saying, to meet the threshold. And so a high pain tolerance, so they're going to get hurt and probably not really notice. And then they're going to have a muted sense of hunger. So they're not really going to know when they're hungry. And then it's going to seem like your child's not, you know, eating, and you're going to get a little worried. So it's more so of them not receiving that information to go respond appropriately. And they don't understand when their body gets tired. So they're going to overexert themselves on the playground, or if they're playing with a peer, and it's just going to reduce in a negative response because, like we were saying earlier, your emotions are tied to this sensation. And then now we're going to talk about some discrimination issues within this system. While they have a sense of like the vague sensory inputs, they're not able to accurately identify where it is coming from. So for instance, with this sensation, they may think if they're hungry or they need to go to the bathroom, but it's like, wait, I'm not hungry, I don't need to go to the bathroom, but yet it's actually related to an emotion that has driven this. So they're not able to determine what it is that's caused this sensation. And it may be that their friend just got upset with them at school, and now they're having these weird sensations in their body because that emotion is directly linked to it. And so this is going to cause confusion in this child. They're going to get anxious because they don't know what their body needs. So as you can see, becoming overwhelmed and this emotion may have them react in a very negative way that seems like a meltdown, which we're going to go into later. I really do want to tie up with letting you know that when you have a child that has sensory processing issues, there are behaviors and then there are meltdowns, and there's a huge difference. So this slide is just kind of to recap what we just all said. So interoception, they're not going to be able to effectively communicate internally what's going on in their body. So hunger, thirst, fatigue, the temperature in their body, going to the bathroom, and feeling pain. So these are just like, this is a really generic list, but it's really a good one to go by to kind of target what it is that your child needs. And this is a case example, and it says, Austin is an 8-year-old boy with a diagnosis of autism. He is having difficulty with toileting. And, you know, developmentally, we know that that's not an appropriate age. And so he is in the honors class at school, so he gets pulled aside to go to those classes, and he has the intelligence to understand the concepts of hunger, thirst, you know, our survival needs. And however, he is invited to his best friend's birthday party that is a sleepover. However, Austin refuses to go and gets really upset with his mother because he experiences bedwetting nightly. And due to the unknown of when he's going to have to go, he's going to be embarrassed, and he's going to continue to not, you know, go into these friendships and develop relationships and hang out with them outside of school. So as you can see, when you do have some disruption in these sensory systems, it does affect other occupations, which is what, you know, we are here for. And, you know, your therapist can also provide you with more info. But I also had this experience on field work. I had a little boy who he was not able to go to the bathroom as well. While he was like 6 years old, that's still, you know, kindergarten readiness. We want you to be able to go to the toilet. And so we were kind of, you know, working hand in hand with his mom. And some of the things that really worked for him were deep breathing. So becoming in tune with his body, that's a really great technique. And then even talking about it with mom and dad and having songs that are associated with, hey, I need to go to the bathroom, because sometimes just that verbalizing that you need to go, it's going to kind of make some connections within the brain. So just even simple things like that, but we'll get into more examples also. And this is a really simple learning activity that, like we always say, we want you to be able to do at home. And so children that have challenges with the interoception system, they don't really know the difference between a tense muscle and one that's in a relaxing state. And so I have this little picture of this little girl, and this is kind of how you would just get your child to just sit, you know, nice and hot, and get them comfortable, you know, dim the lighting, set the environment to the mood that you need. And you just get them to gently rest their hands on their lap. And then you lift your hands up and stretch as far as you can and hold it for about 30 seconds, and then place them back in your lap. And then once you've done like a cycle or two of these, get your child to show you where they felt the tension in their hands, where their fingers were stretched, because this is giving them in tune with their body. And it lets them know, okay, this is what it means to be tight, and this is what it means to be at rest. And just something as simple as that, you know, going to do it before bed or to do it in your morning routine, however you can best incorporate it into your daily lives. And this is another list of some activities to do at home. And you've probably seen some of these activities within our other PowerPoints, which is great because that means you're working on multiple systems at once. But as far as like yoga and the interoception system, you're focusing on listening to your body and providing that like input. Proprioception, vestibular, because your head is moving. And it encourages you to internally look and focus on your body and your mind so that you can make the appropriate movements such as you see in the pictures. And then mindfulness. So you can find these on YouTube. They guide you through it. And even like progressive muscle relaxation, they tell you where to tighten up your hands and release your hands, tighten up your shoulders, release your shoulders. So it really walks you through and gets you to become mindful of your body parts. And then breathing exercises, like I was just saying, these are calming and they help us to pay attention to what's going on in our body. So setting aside some time at night, maybe to do some breathing before you go to bed. And you can even find these on YouTube as well if you are targeted more to like a kid-friendly one. And then alerting activities. So this is like exercise. So you can work on multiple things at once. And even with the proprioception, if they're seeking, you want them to also know like, okay, here I am very alert because I just ran. And now here's my body calming down. So to know the difference between the two so that they can continue to become in tune with their own body. And then even social stories. So this is something that your OT may even be able to develop for you. You can find some online, but it's really good if you can find a therapist to kind of make one geared individualized towards your patient. And what they do is they talk about concepts that are really hard for children to grasp. And we can't always, make sure that they know they can't remember everything. So these social stories are very nice, and they're very helpful for toilet training, temperature regulation, feeling hungry, thirsty. And they are simply just a piece of paper that kind of just walks you through like a daily routine and tells you like, how am I feeling? Check the box, whatever. And it can have like your body parts. You can have like, how's my tummy feeling? How's my lungs feeling? How's my heart feeling? And just any of these things. And like I said, definitely talk to your OT because she can come up with a great one, I'm sure. And then, so an emotional matching game. You can even have a fun activity at the house, get a bunch of magazines, cut the pictures out, work on some fine motor skills, all of these things at once. And then try to capture emotions. So like smiley faces and frowns and tired faces, and then continue to talk about how you feel when you do like a certain activity. And it's just kind of giving them that tie to like, here's my emotion and here's how I'm feeling. And then also like a body scan, kind of the same concept of the deep breathing, kind of becoming in tune with your body. And if you like pictures, or if your child likes pictures, you can talk head to toe. How am I feeling? How am I feeling? And we can just walk through like each picture. And so that, again, it just kind of lets you know, like after exercising, I feel really alert. I feel really energized. But then if they feel really tired, there's the opposite. Or either they're really hungry. So it's just helping them identify these needs so that they can become more in tune with their body. And so just to kind of recap, I wanted to talk about interoception, but also like the link between the proprioception and the interoception. So you have the receptors in your muscles, your joints, and your body parts. They give you a sense of where you are. When you take a step off of a ledge, you know that your foot needs to get the ground. So kids with poor proprioception have difficulty and may trip. And then interoception is kind of the same concept, except the receptors are not in the muscles and joints, but rather in our organs and on our skin. And they tell us information that's going on inside our body. And they send that information to our brain so that we can regulate our body temperature, our thirst, our hunger, our digestive system, and our heart rate. And so now I want to kind of just do a huge recap of basically everything that we talked about from week 1, and whether to recognize, is it sensory or is it behavior? So I like these examples because I had a really hard time on my fieldwork distinguishing between the fact, is this kid having a sensory meltdown or is this just a behavior? And so the first example says he has a meltdown every night during getting ready for bed routine. But on the flip side, you have where a behavior may appear more as he's compliant with brushing his teeth with dad, but not with mom. So you kind of see the two where it's like, okay, this is like a whole overall, he's having a meltdown just with the routine itself, but the behavior may occur when he's actually doing it for mom or Beth or the OT or however. And then the hunger one, she would go all day without liquids if we wouldn't let her drink from a bottle. So that bottle must be providing some sensation that that child needs. Where on the flip side, the behavior may appear that she's refusing to try new foods, but she eats several snacks a day. So you can kind of see the difference. And then even he cannot self-soothe. He escalates when we ignore the tantrum. So you kind of can see how you as a parent can approach this from a behavior or a sensory standpoint. And I'll go over one more. And then it says she struggles with changes in routines, whereas she struggles with following directions. So there's kind of a difference when you have that set routine and when you have direct instruction that you've given your child.
Alrighty, so that was a lot of great information from Lexi about interoception and a review of proprioception. So we hope that you got all that information. There should be a handout that'll be posted to our Facebook page after this too, so you can refer back to it very easily. So like I mentioned earlier, you took a participation survey before we started. So now we want to do another one after the fact. So after you've watched some of these videos and we've gone through all the sensory information, we would like to hear what you have to think about this, how we can improve in the future and all that stuff. So the link is provided on the slide, and then I can post it in the chat if you want me to. So that way we can get this data so we can see what you think.
Yes. And if y'all ever want to go back and rewatch because you felt like you missed one or just one didn't really connect very well, please know that they are posted on our Facebook and you are available to watch them on the YouTube links at any time. And we really do appreciate all your participation throughout these 6 weeks. It has been so much fun and a great learning experience even for us. So we just really appreciate all that y'all have done to kind of make our program go.
So if you want to take just a couple minutes and take that for us, that would be awesome. And then we'll come back. So take about 5 minutes or so, and then come back to us, okay? So even if you haven't finished the survey, the last slide for us is just questions. So you can continue to complete that survey. If you ever have questions, please feel free to reach out to our email listed below. It's on all of our videos on YouTube, and it's on our Facebook page. So please feel free again to reach out any way possible, and we're happy to answer your questions. This has been such a fun experience, like Lexi said, just learning more ourselves about sensory information and then sharing it with you guys. So we're glad that you tuned in, and don't forget to complete that post-participation survey. Thank you again for everything.